Okay, so we're going to make some sausage rolls. So the things that we're going to need to make our sausage rolls today are some puff pastry. I've got pre-made, and this is in the frozen section, and I've just let it thaw out of the freezer for maybe like 10 minutes, so it's a little bit soft. Some garlic. You can either use clove garlic or lazy garlic like I'm going to use. A dash of milk, I'd say no more than say 100 mils, and that's my silicone brush in there. A red onion, which we're going to chop up. Salt and pepper. We've got 500 grams of beef mince, but you can use any mince that you like. It might be chicken, turkey, pork. It might even be corn mince, so you can make some really nice veggie ones too. But 500 grams is about what you want. Some Worcester sauce and some tomato sauce. I've got some fresh parsley from my garden, but you might choose to use dried parsley. That's perfectly cool. We've got a carrot. And then we get some utensils, so we've got a grater, we've got a garlic crusher if you're using fresh garlic, a nice sharp knife, but if you're not too brave with your knife, you can use a small knife. We're only really going to be using it to cut the pastry and the onions, so it doesn't have to be that sharp. A couple of spoons, so that's just a little tablespoon and a teaspoon there, and a fork. And that's all that you'll need. Oh, and an egg. So that's all that you're going to need for our sausage rolls. So first things first, you're going to want to preheat your oven. So I'm going to turn mine on here. So let's just turn my oven on into bake. And it's going to be, if you're using an electric oven, it's going to be about 200. Or if you're using gas mark, it's probably going to be about gas mark 5.5 or 6. So turn your oven on and make sure that you give it at least 10 minutes or so to warm up. Okay, so while we're preheating our oven, we're just going to chop the top and the bottom off of our carrot. We're going to save that for my compost heap. We're going to grate the carrot. Now I've already pre-washed this, so make sure you wash any fresh fruit or veg that you are going to be using, particularly because you don't know who's handled it in the supermarkets before you. So here you go. Red carrot. Put your carrot into your mixing bowl. Next I'm going to take my parsley and chop it on up. Again, you can use dried parsley if you've got it in your cupboard. This one just came out the garden, so I'm going to chop it up nice and rough. I'm watching my fingers, so you notice I do this with my fingers to stop myself cutting my fingernails off. So we don't want fingernail sausage rolls. We're just going to really roughly chop that up. And any of these stalks that I get, I'm going to make sure I remove them because they can be a little bit bitter. They go back into the compost. Nice and rough with your parsley. Using the back of your knife, you notice the blade is not facing my palm. I can use it to scoop up my parsley from my chopping board. So here we go, goes into my bowl, nice and easy. Next, red onion. Chop up your red onion. I cut mine in half. I'm going to remove the top stalk. Now I'm keeping the bottom root intact because that's the bit that releases a lot of that gas that makes you cry. So let's not cry over our sausage rolls. Let's keep the root intact. Remove all of that outer skin and you're left with a nice ruby red onion. Chop it nice and roughly, it doesn't have to be too precise. These are really quick and easy to make. And they're really nice when you take them out the oven, and they're nice and hot. So I'm taking my skin off. Again, if you've got a compost heap, you can add all that back to the compost, and it's a nice way of recycling from your kitchen. So I'm cutting fingers into my onion. This is the way I like to chop mine. Tucking my fingers under. I'm going to chop. And because the onion has natural layers, it means I don't have to work that hard to chop up my onion. And there's half an onion done. Nice and easy. Back of the blade into my bowl. So nice and rough. Now you can use a full onion if you like. I'm probably just going to use half, only because I don't think I need that much. That was a pretty big red onion. So I can save that and use it another time. Next, garlic. So I'm going to use lazy garlic because I'm feeling a bit lazy today. So you could use 3 whole garlic cloves crushed up, or if you're lazy like me, although this is garlic from my garden, so that's why it's so yellow. It's garlic preserved in olive oil, nice and lazy. If you're using lazy garlic, be prepared that it's going to lose a little bit of its pungency, because that will happen when it oxidizes. So into the bowl, I'm probably adding a teaspoon of garlic, and I just decided I'd empty that jar and get rid of it. So off it goes. So that's most of our ingredients. What's next? We need to add our mince. Now, like I said, you don't have to use beef or animal product if you don't want to. You can use corn, and I've made veggie sausage rolls with corn mince. The only thing with corn mince is that it's a little bit dry. So when you add your wet ingredients next, you might want to add a bit more of those. So I'm going to add my mince on in. I'm going to recycle this plastics and stick it into my sink. Into my bowl, I'm going to salt and pepper. So I'm not going to use a lot of salt because I'm using Worcestershire sauce, and that's quite salty. So I'm just adding a bit of each. Make sure that I've added some pepper in there. I don't really like pepper, but I quite like this. So here's what we have so far. You can get your hand in there and mush it around next. So mush it up with your hand, mix all the ingredients together, and then we're going to add the wet bits next. It makes a weird sound. Now, once you've mixed all of your meat and veg and garlic together, this hand that you've used, you want to wash it off because you've been using raw meat. Okay, now that my hands are clean once more, I'm going to take my Worcestershire sauce. I'm going to use 1/4 cup. So I've got my little cup here. 1/4 cup of Worcestershire sauce. Now this has fish product in it, so if you are a non-meat eater, your substitute could be soy sauce, or you could use a little bit of tamarind sauce if you like. Anything that's a little bit salty and dark in colour and flavour is what you're going to use. So in that goes. Pop that to the side. Tomato sauce. We're going to be using 1.5 tablespoons. Oh, and I haven't got a lot of this left. So I'm going to squeeze this out. There's one. In it goes. This again has salt in it, so you want to be careful that you're not using so much salt when you season your sausage rolls. Cool. Use my finger, scoop it off, and make sure that I wash my finger again, just so it's nice and clean. Try not to touch your face when you're cooking, only because you don't want to be spreading any germs anywhere, okay? Now I can go in with a spoon or my hand once more, and I can mix this all together. I want to make sure that everything is combined well. And if you're using corn mince, it's going to soak up the liquid quite quickly, so you want to make sure you're mixing it really well as fast as you can without making too much mess. So my oven has just told me that it's heated and ready for me. So that's the inside of your sausage roll mix. Pretty simple and easy. It takes about 5 minutes, not very long at all. We're going to pop that to the side. We're going to prepare our pastry, which goes on the outside of this. Okay, so we're going to make some egg wash for the pastry. We're going to crack 1 egg into our 100 ml of milk. Again, it doesn't have to be cow's milk. It could be any type of milk that you want to use. I'd say one that isn't too sweet sweet is probably better because the sugar's gonna sort of counteract with pastry a little bit. So try and use like a soya if you are milk free, or you know, you're avoiding dairy itself. You don't have to use egg either. A good alternative for that could be a bit of cornstarch or xanthium gum, just to make it slightly gloopy, like it's going to be used like glue basically. So if mum or you or anybody in your house is not not good with dairy, you can use that. So I'm mixing it together. I got a little silicone brush, a pastry brush, mix, mix, mix. Okay, on to the good bit. So we're getting our pastry and we're going to fill it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our pastry out. It comes on these little plastic sheets. Take it out, place it on your chopping board. We'll come back to those in a minute. You're going to remove the plastic really carefully, because once it's soft, it's really easy to tear. Place it down. Get rid of that. Make sure we can recycle it if we can. We're going to grab a knife. So using your hands, which are nice and clean. Remember, we haven't been touching our face. And if we have been to the toilet, we've washed them. We're going to make a sausage on our pastry. So I've left a little gap at the top so that I'm not going to be squashing all of my nice filling out of my pastry when I roll up this sausage in a minute. So you can be nice and generous. You can see how much I'm using here. And I want to make sure I make a nice sausage, nice and consistent all the way there. So there we go. So now I'm going to use my hands. Oh, actually, I'm going to use a little bit of my egg wash. And I'm going to do a little bit of egg wash besides my sausage at the bottom and the top, and also down the side. So I'm painting a nice rectangle, and I'm going to use my hands and roll my sausage. So I'm going to keep it quite nice and tight. This is really fun if you're doing this with mum. We're going to roll our sausage, and then we're going to use our knife and we're going to cut. So there's one of my sausage rolls. Now, how is it going to stay together? That's a good point. You're going to use a fork. So we're going to get a fork from my drawer of utensils. It's really messy in there. I'm going to use the fork, and I'm going to use my finger like this, and I'm going to squash it together and makes a nice pattern. Ooh, makes a nice pattern. And I'm going to turn it, just fold the edges in a little bit so that when they cook, they get nice and crispy. You want to do that at top and bottom so that we know that it's going to stay together. Again, you use your finger on the fork and you make this nice little, it almost looks like a fish tail. We squash the sides in so we know we're not going to lose our filling. And we can use a little bit of our finger just to make sure that those are staying together. Equally, you want to just make sure you just run, I'll show you from this angle, you run your fork along these side edges just to make sure that the pastry doesn't come apart. Now you want to make sure that you cut little lines. So with my knife, it doesn't have to be a big sharp knife, it could be a nice butter knife. We're going to cut some little lines along the top so that the inside filling gets a little bit of air into it. Okay, so that's one sausage roll. Now you want to make sure you get some egg wash, and you egg wash the top to make it nice and shiny, and then when it bakes in the oven, it makes it nice and crispy and brown and delicious. So there we go. So now we're going to put these onto the tray, and then we'll put them in the oven. So here are my wonderful sausage rolls ready for the oven. They all look shiny and delicious. So that's how many I made. I made 4 big ones, and then I made 4 little mini ones. And these are really, really tasty. You can freeze them like this. You don't even have to cook them yet. They can sit in the freezer for a little bit if you feel like you want to save them for later and then cook them fresh. But they're going to go into the oven now. Okay, so once they are in the oven, we're going to set them to cook. Hello? for roughly 30 minutes. So when they're nice and golden, so 30 minutes. Oh, they'll be ready soon. And there they are, they're in the oven now, all browning off. Guys, here are my sausage rolls. Look how yummy they are. So they're a little bit browner on the ends, but that's okay. They're delicious. They smell good. So I got quite a lot out of my mix. You can see I've got 4 big ones and 4 little ones. 4 big ones I could cut in half, and I could have 8 reasonable sized ones for each person in my family. So I hope you enjoy my recipe, and I'd love to see what you make. Have fun in the kitchen. Make sure you keep yourself safe at home during this period. Keep those hands clean, and I'll see you soon. Bye.